India was asked to pay double the rate for Chinese rapid antibody tests for the coronavirus, which have put on hold now in many states because of faulty results. All the states, in fact, the center has said, the ICMR has said that, look, we cannot have these Chinese tests in these kits, they don't work. The government has cancelled the order for COVID-19 test kits, which were being sold at an inflated price by an Indian distributor, Real Metabolics. Now, details of the marked up price emerged from a legal dispute between the distributor and the importer that went to the Delhi High Court. The government, for its part, says it hasn't lost a single rupee.
It's these rapid COVID test kits from this Chinese firm, Vonfo, now at the center of a major controversy.
India had ordered 5 lakh such kits via an Indian distributor, but a Delhi High Court order had revealed that the price decided by ICMR is 2.5 times over the original price. That is, rupees 245 rupees kit was bought for rupees 600.
The price inflation surfaced only because the distributor and the importer went to court. The court said markup is on the higher side. Price COVID kits at 400 rupees per kit. Moreover, these kits were found defective by the state governments, leading ICMR to suspend testing on them. Pushed to the back foot, the government clarified its position, saying that it couldn't procure directly from Chinese firm for logistical issues and that it decided to go with the exclusive distributor. Of the 4 bids received, lowest bid of 600 rupees was selected. The government says it's the first ever effort by an Indian agency to procure kits, and that based on assessment, order has been cancelled as kits are underperforming. As a result, India did not lose any money, the government said.
जब फील्ड पर उनके बारे में कंप्लेंट आई तो आईसीएमआर ने इमीडिएटली रिएक्ट किया. आप सबकी नॉलेज में है, उसके बेसिस पर रिएक्ट करके उन्होंने उनको कैंसिल भी किया और कोई भी पेमेंट उन ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस को नहीं दिया गया है.
If not for these quality issues, government would have ended up paying 140% more than the value of these kits. Sources now tell NDTV that government is now focusing on procuring antibody kits with better quality from South Korean firms. With camera person Joseph, this is Arvind Gunasekar for NDTV.
Well, let's try and bring you a couple of details of this before we go across to our panelists. It started on the 27th of March when the government ordered 5 lakh antibody test kits to actually be ordered. These got dispatched to India on the 16th of April. The importer got the price for 245 rupees, but the distributor sold it to the government for 600 rupees per kit, a huge markup. Now, this entire issue came up in the High Court, which heard the dispute between the importer and the distributors. Now, the High Court said that, look, the markup is on the higher side and that there must be a price reduction to 400 rupees per kit. Then these kits went to various states and they found that these were giving entirely inaccurate results. For example, in Rajasthan, these kits, when used on those patients with very severe symptoms of COVID-19, tested negative, came back with a negative result. And so today, finally, the government said we can't use them at all. So today, the government has stopped the use of these faulty Chinese test kits. But the question is this: why did we acquire them in this manner, in the same way? Joining us now, Malini Aisola, Dr. Arjun Dang and Dr. Yatin Mehta. I'd like to thank all of you very much for being with us. Malini, let me come to you first. The government attempted to directly negotiate with this Chinese firm. So at that stage, they would have known the price that they could have acquired it had they gone for a direct buy. Now, they've mentioned the reasons why they couldn't procure this directly. However, shouldn't they have known that the markup in price was absurd at the time of actually agreeing to 600 rupees?
Good evening, Vishnu. You're absolutely right. The government, basically what this points to is, procurement that has taken place through a scientific agency without adequate precautions. So we're seeing that ICMR has had to conduct this procurement on its own. It has expertise in perhaps conducting quality checks on these products, but not specifically in procurement. And so you're right that ICMR should have been aware of the price at which this company was offering the test kits. Also, if we're looking at what the allegations here are, which is of overcharging, This is more in relation to the intermediaries. So also, again, there were no precautions taken in terms of, and both the intermediaries are actually Indian companies. So these could have easily been brought in check by the government. In addition to that, also the large quantity that was placed. So there are also questions about why the government decided to place an order for 5 lakh kits at one shot, when it was also simultaneously not taking adequate precautions in terms of conducting the quality checks either at the pre-shipment stage or when the kits landed in India. So prior to ICMR even distributing it to the states, they were in a position to do more checking, more quality checks.
So in fact, I wanted to go across to Dr. Mehta on that. Dr. Mehta, when we go in for medical procurement, particularly in a critical time like this, should there be a process where tests and trials actually take place before we make these huge orders? Because it's difficult for us as a country to be in a situation where you've ordered lakhs of these test kits and today the government says don't use them at all, they don't work.
No, I'm sure, Vishnu, I mean, they must have conducted some initial trial, must have had some trial kits which they must have tried it out. But obviously these kits are not functioning and it's quite uniformly underperforming. Abysmally so. So yes, I think these kits are going to be returned, and I don't think any money has been paid also. I've just seen a letter by ICMR to all the states and the ministries that these kits need to be returned. Yeah, but initial checks must have been done, I suppose. Maybe they had they had performed well. I don't know. I can't say all that.
Dr. Dang, in terms of this particular test, the rapid reaction test, the ICMR, post acquiring lakhs of these pieces, said that this test has a series of restrictions. It cannot be relied on, and there are better tests which are available, should be the first line of treatment. What benefit theoretically would these tests have given us in any case?
Sure. Very good evening, Vishnu. So your question is completely irrelevant. I'd like to start by saying that the utopic mirage that the antibody tests created, that is going to be the perfect scenario for testing in India and it's going to be the key to the lock of coronavirus testing, is completely false. So the antibody testing needs to be done very diligently with protocols in place and with a physician's advice. Also not forgetting that the PCR test that is being done currently is the gold standard. So primarily there are 4 scenarios where antibody tests have been used in the West and where they can be used here as well. So firstly, we have all been hearing that surveillance is extremely important to actually know how much of the herd immunity has developed in the population. The second one would be with reference to ICMR's protocol of various hotspots, where it is used in conjunction with the PCR test. The third one obviously would be again screening of people who want to join back work, and also healthcare workers, triage the healthcare workers. And the fourth one would be any candidates for plasma therapy can also be based on the result of the antibody test. But then again, we should never forget that the first week when the patient is most infective, has the maximum symptoms, PCR is the test that is required for intervention and identifying so that we can isolate effectively.
Okay. Malini, a couple of points that the government has mentioned today. They've said that, look, we've not lost any money, and that's great to know. But they've also said the original quotation, when they spoke directly with the company, had no commitment on logistics. Secondly, they said that there was no commitment on timelines. And thirdly, they said the rates had no clause for currency fluctuation. But all of these points they've raised, actually, you can look at it from another standpoint as well. When they say that original quotation had no commitment on logistics, where does logistics come into place when Air India on a Mercy flight brought all of these kits back probably free of charge? Secondly, no commitment on timelines when the government did actually acquire the kits properly, right? In that after the tender was signed, it arrived almost a month later. So are you satisfied by the explanation given by the government?
No, we're definitely not satisfied. And I think that the larger problem here is the lack of transparency, that the government has not had an open approach to adopting, that it has adopted in providing information to the public. So, for example, what it should have done in terms of procurement of any health products related to the pandemic was to put in the public domain all the purchase orders, the rates, the suppliers. All of this information would have actually helped, and also in a way it actually helps the government itself in taking adequate precautions. The other issue here is also that the agency that was was procuring these orders and placing the procurement orders is not one that has adequate expertise. This clearly could have been managed had another agency been involved with perhaps more expertise. Also, in respect of what you were saying, in terms of a direct order from the Chinese company, if you look at some of the documents, so for example, there was a document that was put out around 11th of April, which is an expression of interest by the ICMR. There, one of the conditions is categorically mentioned that it has to be a manufacturer or an authorized distributor in India. Mm-hmm. So the ICMR and the government was, adamant on dealing with Indian companies. And so I think that is also something that might have tripped up this whole issue. Okay. And I think one thing that we're learning from the saga is that we really need to have more information about procurement placed in the public domain, including also the validation protocols, which currently we don't have any idea about, either for RT-PCR kits or for rapid antibody kits.
Dr. Mehta, is that something that you'd like to come in on? In terms of emergency medical procurement, if there is a government tender, is the system which exists that the L1 lowest common bidder, they will win the contract, there will be negotiations, and then depending on the case, things will be fast-tracked. Is that alone good enough to ensure that we get quality items for millions in our country in a time like this? Or do you believe we need to think harder about how we procure medical equipment in emergency cases?
No, you're partly right, Vishnu, because this whole thing about L1 may not be necessarily foolproof. It was okay. The whole tradition of L1 started from the British colonial era in order to, make it more transparent and to see that the lowest price wins. But then the lowest price may not be the best quality also. So there are a lot of things which need to be looked into. And this, in these sort of emergency situations, again, probably it was circumvented, the whole process, in order to expedite, because how does anybody supply 5 lakh kits in a few days' time? So that's also another thing. But yes, it needs to be looked into, and the whole process needs to be more transparent.
Sure. Yeah. Dr. Dang, one of the points that the government did mention is that the original quotation, when they tried to do this directly, was on the basis of 100% direct advance, and that doesn't work for us, because had we agreed on that, this didn't work, then we would have lost all our money. So to me, that point makes a lot of sense. And so the government, when it says that, look, we haven't lost a single rupee because we haven't paid upfront, that's important for the exchequer, even though this is a relatively small amount of money. However, the government of Tamil Nadu, which entered a separate agreement with them, agreed to pay 50% or whatever it was upfront. So they've lost that money, haven't they?
Yes, that's definitely correct. Any kind of a test kit, when it's brought into a particular market, needs to be validated first according to the population there. So knowing ICMR and with NIV, they've done a very stringent validation for the PCR kits. And if you still remember, first only 2 had come out, and now there are close to 16 or 17 kits that are validated. So what I would actually assume was that even for these kits, they would have done a very stringent validation. But when we look at the inaccuracy of these kits, we have to follow back, trace our steps very diligently. So why I say that is that even during transport, because some of these kits need to be maintained till up to 25 to 30 degrees Celsius. And a place like Rajasthan, you have to actually see if that temperature was maintained in order to maintain the integrity of the test kit. Then you have to actually go back to China and ask the suppliers there that is this just a faulty batch, or is it just that it's not been validated here? So it's actually more than what actually comes to the eye. So actually to get to the ground of it, and I actually feel we shouldn't play the blame game right now, but looking forward, what is the best thing to do right now? So there are multiple other antibody kits that different countries have. I actually have heard that Korea has one of the best quality kits. So why not actually reach out to them? And I believe there is an availability issue, but then we can even contact Europe, etc., to see if anyone has a better quality product that is available.
Yeah. So that, in fact, last word to you, Malini, on this. Ultimately, it's the quality of the kits that should count in a situation like this. Do you agree with Dr. Mehta when he said that, look, L1 is something which is etched in stone in every deal in this country, but sometimes it just doesn't make sense?
I have to agree with the other two panelists
Particularly
on
medical
this one.
equipment, it may not make sense.
Yeah,
but
no,
you
I
should
just
have
wanted to
more
ask
checks
Malini
and balances.
about that, Dr. Mehta. You know, your views. I just wanted to get her views on this same thing, on the same topic. Yeah.
I think going forward, we need to make the decisions that work for us. And so rather than, so we need to have a calm approach rather than doing panic buying. We need to make sure that the test kits that we're procuring are actually, the ones that we have confidence in that would actually work in the field in India. So with due precautions, we also need to make sure that we procure the right kind of test kits, because everybody acknowledges that the government is also trying very hard to scale up testing, and it's a need in the country. But we need to make sure that we buy the test kits that work for us and that we have confidence in.
Dr. Mehta, last word to you. How much of a setback is it from a time standpoint when you've got 5 lakh plus test kits rejected for these grounds and you want to step up testing for all the reasons we know about? Is this time not critical, where if we had important equipment with us, testing kits, we would have been able to get a better idea of where we stand? So is that not a problem for us right now?
See, Vishnu, we are not the only ones who have been licked. There are several European countries which have returned their Chinese kits again. So, I mean, what can I say? Yes, we have lost some time, but as Dr. Dang explained already, the uses are not specifically for diagnosis of the disease, but there are several other uses for which it is to be utilized, like convalescent plasma therapy, which comes only after a month of the illness beginning, or for epidemiological reasons, or for people joining back work after they've been quarantined for 14 days. So the uses are different. But yes, we have lost some time, yeah.
All right. I'd like to thank you all very much for joining us. The government says that it hasn't lost a single rupee, but I think it's the process that we are trying to question over here, particularly at a time like this. Thank you all very much for joining us.